Shalom, friends. Rob Vanhoff here with TelosTorah. Going to look a little bit at our Torah portion from Exodus 18, Parashat Yitro. We're going to look at verses 9 through 11, a little bit more about Jethro. If you haven't seen it, did a short video on Rob on the Rock about 18 verse 1. But here I want to look at 18, 9 through 11, and then I want to look at a parallel from the book of Chronicles to somewhat of a parallel to talk about a particular aspect of something that Jethro says here. But let's read through this in Hebrew. There's some curious things to talk about. And for those who haven't had any Hebrew, I encourage you to start learning a little bit. You can learn the alphabet first, and send me a note if you need some help. And or you can just sit and listen and pick up things along the way. But we're going to go Exodus 18, 9 through 11 first. And it begins, it says, Vayichad Yitro al kol hatova asher asa Adonai leYisrael, asher hitzilo miyad Mitzrayim. So, Vayichad, this is, and he rejoiced. This is Vayichad Yitro. Jethro rejoiced. Now, there's a really curious, rare thing that's happening here is we have this dalet here with a dagesh, with a shavah at the very end of a word. Vayichad. So the question is this shavah vocal or silent? Well, typically, it would be a vocal shavah under a dagesh chazak. But if it's a dagesh, do we say de or is it ad? My sense is that vayichad, it takes a little bit of extra d to finish that word. Vayichad. Normally, in a normal situation, we wouldn't have a dagesh in a place like that. Vayichad, it means, and he rejoiced. Who did? Yitro. So again, this is a situation where we have verb first, then subject. Vayichad Yitro. And Jethro rejoiced. Al kol hatova, about all the tova, all the good. Now, if you remember, Vayishma Yitro et kol asher asa Elohim, from 18 verse 1, and Jethro heard everything that the Lord had done for Moses and for Israel, his people. This is a continuation of the same idea. He heard it and he believed it and he rejoiced. Vayichad Yitro, and he rejoiced. Jethro did. Al kol hatova. He understood that this tova, from our word tov, this tov was God's tov. It's not tov that is invented by man. This is a tov that is defined as tov from heaven. This is true tov, true goodness. And it brought real joy. He rejoiced to hear and to believe and to know the truth brought joy to Jethro. And he called it good. He rejoiced over the good. So this is a good thing. To rejoice over good, when it's really good, is a proper emotional response, isn't it? Vayichad Yitro al hatova asher asa Adonai leYisrael. All the good which the Lord had done for Israel. Asher hitzilo miyad Mitzrayim. Because he had delivered him, that is Israel, from the hand of Egypt, or from the power, from the yad. Yad is hand, but you could say from the power of Egypt, something like that. It says Egyptians. It's just from Mitzrayim, from Egypt. Verse 10, Vayomer Yitro, and Jethro said, Baruch Adonai asher hitzil etchem miyad Mitzrayim umiyad Paro asher hitzil et ha'am mitachat yad Mitzrayim. Another beautiful phrase paralleling what he had just said in verse 9. And Jethro said as a blessing, Baruch Adonai, blessed is the Lord, asher hitzil etchem, who delivered y'all, miyad Mitzrayim, from the hand of Egypt, umiyad Paro, and from the hand of Pharaoh. asher hitzil et ha'am mitachat yad Mitzrayim, that he has delivered the people from under the hand of Egypt. Isn't that wonderful? He's rejoicing in the truth. He's rejoicing in the truth. He's rejoicing in God's deeds, in God's faithfulness in history to act according to his promise. Now, verse 11, this is where we're going to look at a connection, somewhat of a connection, I think, from Chronicles. And he continued, Jethro, Ata yadati ki gadol Adonai mikol ha'elohim ki badavar asher zadu alehem. So Ata here is now, not with an aleph, that would be you, right? Ata, but Ata with an ayin. Ata yadati. Now I know. Yadati. That's just a good old call. First person singular in the perfect yadati. Now I know. Ki gadol Adonai mikol ha'elohim. Now I know that Adonai is gadol mikol ha'elohim. Notice how it said the Lord is greater than all the gods. Ki vadavar asher zadu alehem is a strange phrase. It says, for in the matter which they acted insolently, it says here, presumptuously against them. The Targum here says that basically that the things that, what it means is that the things that the Egyptians conspired against Israel has come upon themselves. And so one traditional understanding is that this is a shorthand for Egypt decreed to throw the children of Israel, the sons, into the Nile to drown them when they were born. That was the decree, remember, all the way back to the beginning of Exodus, which the midwives rejected, of course. But that decree was now reversed on the heads of the Egyptians who drown in the Nile, or in the Yom Suf, in the water, that is, not the Nile. But what I want to look at is this phrase, that I know ki gadol Adonai mikol ha'elohim. What does it mean that Jethro says, now I know that the Lord, that is the God of Israel, is greater than all the gods? And so you see you have a lowercase g here, greater than all the gods. So some who believe that the religion here in the Torah, the religion of Moses, or of ancient Israel, was what they call monolatry, not monotheism. There's people who say it's monolatry. It means that monolatry is this word that scholars made up to say, they believed in all sorts of gods. Like every nation had their god, or every little location had their own god. And those people at each of those locations were to worship that particular local god. And some say, no, look at this verse. But the only thing that we're supposed to take away from this passage, people will say, is that Jethro recognized that the God of Israel is somehow special. He's not the only God, so goes that viewpoint. But he is the God of Israel, and these other gods are subservient to him. And so what it means is that the God of Israel is a God like all these other gods. They're all equally real, but the Lord, or Adonai, the God of Israel, is the superior one of all of them. And so monolatry is the idea that Israel was to worship only their God. They were to be exclusive worshipers of Adonai, but that it was the way of the world for them to believe that all nations had their own gods. And those gods, those nations are to worship their way, but we're to worship our way. They have their gods, and we're supposed to be faithful just to ours. And so the 10 Commandments, or the 10 words, where it opens up, you shall have no other Elohim Lefanai, Elohim acharim lefanai, means not that there are it's not a monotheistic view, that there's only one true God, but that the God of Israel says, even the God of Israel knows that there's other Elohim. It's right there in the 10 words, Elohim acharim. Just don't put them before me. It's monolatry is our religion. Yes, there's all sorts of gods, but I'm the one you're supposed to be faithful to exclusively. That's kind of a rough profile, if you will, of people who advocate monolatry. Whereas a monotheistic, what is categorized as a monotheistic view would say, no, these other gods are not real. They're the works of man's hands. They're the projections of human imagination, projection of human desire, fear, superstition, etc. Or it could be a false, it could be a totalitarian system where there's quote unquote priests who push some sort of religion on the people and force it on them, and so it's all made up, even though the people who listen to those in power believe it's true. It's the whole thing's a sham. So you can't be both a monotheist and a monolatrist. Monotheism, there's one true God. Monolatry is that there's a whole bunch of gods, and you're supposed to just be, and you believe in all of them, but you're only faithful and obedient, exclusively so, to one. That's how the two ways that people read this. Well, it seems, how do we know Jethro? How do we know which one Jethro is? Is Jethro here saying there's all sorts of gods, and now I know that the Lord is just the strongest? He's just like the strongest guy in the room? Is that it? Well, I suggest that that's not what it means here. It means that among the Elohim is a term here used to describe, and in this context, the Egyptian power structure, the Egyptian institutions that put Pharaoh as an incarnate God, that put all the mythology, the Nile being a god, the sun, Ra being a god, all the the hybrid creatures that you see in ancient Egyptian iconography on pyramid inscriptions and things like that. The dog heads and the bird heads and the alligator heads and all these things. That put a sense of fear on people. The size of the pyramids and the obelisks and all these things, they imposed an intimidating fear on people, even though they're the works of men's hands, clearly. And all the beliefs of ancient Egypt, and about the afterlife, and all these kinds of things. These represent the Elohim of ancient Egypt. It doesn't mean that that God had assigned Egypt some disembodied spirit to control, who was pulling all the strings, and who was receiving the worship of the ancient Egyptians. That's not what it means. Or who revealed a religion. It doesn't mean that there was a God that the true God put in charge over Egypt, and that the Egyptian religion is a revealed religion of how to worship that God. No, not at all. Even though the monolatrist, if you talk to them long enough, you take them down, that's the implications of that view. No, the ancient Egyptian religious worldview and the mythology and all the, if you want to call it theology, that had Pharaoh as its center, was man-made, just as man-made as the pyramids and all the statues and things. And it was a power trip. It's like a totalitarian power trip of humans, human projection of dark, unredeemed hearts. That's what it is. And using that as a power over others. And we have firsthand insight from the account of Israel under Egypt. They were getting squashed by that evil, by Pharaoh. And so what is exposed with Israel being delivered is the impermanence of that totalitarian, empire-minded state, whatever you want to call it. But before that's broken, before the Lord did this, it seems real. It seems real that the power that Egypt has must be from the heavens, because no human can put a stop to Pharaoh. No one could stop the Egyptian kingdom. So it felt like these are gods, right? But it's exposed that no, it's just a huge power trip of humans accumulated over time with a lot of fear and intimidation and pride and self-glorification and just darkness. So the Elohim here does not refer to actual disembodied beings that exist. That's not what it means here. It means it's referring to the superstitious religions of humans. And that we are not to project the patterns of human religion, false religion, and try to use that as a model to understand the God of Israel. In the same way that, remember what we're going to see in a few weeks with Parashat Kitisa, where Moses is up on the mountain and the people say, we don't know what happened to Moses. We need to make a gold calf. This is the God that brought you out of Egypt. And they start worshiping. They're trying to use Egyptian mentality that's still in their heart to project outward and make a deity, make a God, so that they can somehow continue, because that's the old pattern. That's the old pattern from Egypt that they're trying to hold on to. They're trying to frame and understand what's happening of God being faithful to his covenant to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and they're trying to fashion it in a supersessionist way, basically, out of an old pattern of religion that they learned, that they saw in other people do in Egypt. Doesn't mean it's real, right? The golden calf, people bowing down and calling the golden calf Adonai and Elohim, doesn't make it so. It's a projection. Any more than in the book of Acts, I think it's Paul and Barnabas get called Zeus and Hermes, and they're traveling in the Mediterranean, and the people say that these are the gods are here, and they're going to offer sacrifices to them. And Paul and Barnabas are going, time out. No. That's how messed up humans are. That's how messed up humans are, the human heart. Calling gods things that are not gods. And that's what Jethro understands here. When he says, Mikol ha'Elohim, he's not talking about disembodied beings that exist. He's talking about systems, what we would call fear-based religious inventions of men. Okay, now I'm just going to back that up here by going over to my other passage, which is from 1 Chronicles 16, as the beautiful psalm here. Shiru l'Adonai kol ha'aretz. Sing unto the Lord all the earth. Baseu miyom el yom yeshuato. And that's that word, evangelize. Preach the good news. Preach good news from day to day, the good news of his salvation. Preach his salvation. Saperu vagoyim, proclaim or tell or relate, vagoyim, among the nations, his kavod, et kavodo, b'kol ha'amim, niflotav, among all the peoples, his wonders. So that means this Shiru l'Adonai and Baseru and preach his salvation from day to day among the nations, among all peoples. That means that because their gods are deaf, dumb, and blind, right? And the people who worship them become like them. They're not real. Verse 25, Ki gadol Adonai, right? Here's the same phrase from our Torah portion. Ki gadol Adonai, umechulal me'od. Great is the Lord, mechulal me'od. Mechulal, and mightily praised, greatly praised. Venorahu, fearful is he, al kol Elohim, over all Elohim. And I see how the NASB says above all gods. Again, think of Jethro's words here in Exodus 18. He's greater than all the gods. Here's above al kol Elohim. Oh, that just must mean from the monolatrous view, there's all these Elohim, disembodied beings floating around in charge of different nations, but failing in their duties, being lazy, whatever. And yeah, they're there, but we're supposed to we don't worship them. We just worship the one God. That's the monolatrous view. I reject it. Rather, Elohim here refers to the false religions invented by humans. How do we know? Look at the very next verse here in 1 Chronicles 16:26. Ki, because kol Elohei ha'amim, all the Elohei, the Elohim of the peoples, Elilim. Now this is a word play. It says their Elohim are not really Elohim, and the words are changed, Elilim. They're not Elohim, they're Elilim, which means they're useless. It's our idols. Idola. It uses the neuter plural in the Greek translation, ancient Jewish Greek translation. Idols. They are idols. Elilim in Leviticus, I think like Leviticus 26:1, Israel's told, don't make Elilim for yourselves. They're works of men's hands. But Adonai, Shamayim Asa. But the Lord, he made the heavens. So he's the creator. Whereas the Elilim, or the Elohei Ha'amim, they're works of man's hands. We're told not to make those. They exist because men made them. Asa. I should actually go to Leviticus 26 and look at that. Vadonai Shamayim Asa. For the Lord made the heavens, not the Elohei Ha'amim. They're idols. They're idols. But Jethro's not going to say, Gadol Adonai Mikol Ha'elilim. He's greater than all the idols, right? He's not going to say he's greater than the idols. That would be silly. He's greater. What it means is that we cannot, and Jethro understands that this mighty deliverance is all he needs to recognize the falsity of human religion, of all religions, and that the covenant God, the God who created heaven and earth and who made this covenant with the patriarchs, is alone the true God. Done. That's it. Let's look at that. Leviticus 26. Lo ta'asu lachem elilim. From Asa, right? You will not make for yourselves elilim. And it goes on to see the rest of all the things here. And this is not the only place. This is a place that comes to mind. Don't make for yourselves elilim. That means because they're the works of man's hands. So Jethro says, Ata yadati ki gadol Adonai mikol ha'elohim. For now I know that the Lord is greater, that he is unlike, he is absolutely, he's the living God. He's faithful over generations. And he acts in history on behalf of his covenant people. And it's not according to their works. They've already complained how much, and he's still guiding them Now, there are consequences along the way, but his covenant faithfulness is sure. Okay, friends, this is a wonderful Torah portion, Exodus 18, 19, and 20. It's called Parashat Yitro, Parashat Jethro. And I hope this just stirs up some thinking for you as you grow in your love for God and your delight in meditating on his Torah. Like it says, meditate in his Torah day and night. All right, friends.